Chinwe Sam Amobi is a licensed architect, a planner, a procurement specialist, and an environmentalist. She is a mother and grandmother. She has 2 sons she is very proud of, and grew up in a close family with many siblings and plenty of love. She values hard work and honesty. As with her, there are no shades, it's either black or white. And that is why she believes in second chances. The very simple things in life make her happy and content. Architect Chinwe loves architecture. She believes there is much more architects can do to make Nigeria a better place both environmentally and socially. She values the culture and tradition of our people and a lover life. Let's welcome Architect Dr. Chinwe Sam Amobi.
Good afternoon, Ma. Thank you so much for honoring this interview on Architects Corner. We are grateful to have you. Please, can we get to know you?
My name is Architect Chinwe Sam Amobi. I'm an architect, I'm a planner, I'm a procurement specialist. I have 2 sons. One is an architect licensed. I teach architecture. Is there anything else? I don't think so. I'm just a very simple person.
Thank you so much, Ma, for being here. We are grateful to have you. Okay, Ma, so the first question is, the first thing I would like to get to know is, what inspired you to become an architect? How did your journey begin?
For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to be an architect. Maybe I was influenced by my father, who was a builder, and I saw so much going on around him. I would go to sites with him, and I could see these lines on paper become structures, and I found it very fascinating. Then it was made so easy because I was a science student, good in maths, good in physics. I loved geography, and I did technical drawing in school. So when it was time for a career choice, it was just one choice: architecture.
And then that was when we used to take JAM, and they would tell you to put first choice, second choice, and third choice courses. And I remember putting first choice architecture, second choice architecture, and third choice architecture. And that's where it started. So unfortunately, then JAM gave me admission to study mechanical engineering. So I was actually in mechanical engineering for a year, but all through that 1 year, I was fighting to get back to architecture. And that made me spend 7 years in university. And I do not want to have engineering before my name, architecture before my name. And up to date, I still just want to have architecture before my name. So it wasn't that difficult.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ma. So, Ma, so at what point did you choose to become a lecturer or to teach architecture?
Okay, I remember when I was doing my master's in the University of Nigeria, I had this lecturer that just did not like me. So he always threatened me with spending extra years. We are the second set to do MSc architecture, actually. So, and I would look at him. And in fact, at a point, I made a bet with him. I told him, I'm never spending master's. I never had a receipt. I'm going to leave this school without having a receipt. So after my master's, he was the one doing a departmental clearance. The day I went for the clearance, I just looked at him and I said, you know what? I'm coming back here to join you as a lecturer, but I have a lot of other things to do first. When I'm done, I'm coming back to teach architecture. So I think that was probably just an utterance. I was so mad at the man for trying to, for harassing me that I will stay here, I'm not graduating, and I worked so hard to make sure his words didn't come through. So I think at that point, I knew that, but I had so many things in my head I wanted to do. And I said, okay, when I'm done with them, I'll come back to lecture. And I think it was a good decision because I just love to teach.
Wow. Wow.
And I hope I'm making the right impact on my students. I actually hope so.
Yeah, I hope so. They'll be watching this actually.
Okay.
So, as a lecturer, what would be your advice to students who are just starting architecture or who are just starting their studies in architecture?
Okay. Unfortunately, a lot of people come in to study architecture without knowing what choice is all about. So the first thing they do is get a shock that they're not going to be running around the place like other students, that they're going to have to spend so many hours stuck in the studio trying to please their lecturers. But architecture doesn't really give you the time to do what other students get to do. First of all, you can't you can't read anywhere because your design is the highest credit load. So, and you can't do design on the go. So design kind of grounds you. So a lot of students have to reset their brains that, oh, is this what I've come to do? And therefore, I always, if I have to teach I don't think I teach first year students. I never really thought I teach from second year. My first was then trying architects are jumping all over the place. They can have their notebooks at their back pockets, and wherever they sit down, they can read. But design actually grounds you. It's not only design. We have a lot of courses that are studio-based, and those courses ground you. So the first thing you know is, I want to get out of here in 4 years. I don't want to stay beyond it. So you just follow the process, and then you get out in 4 years. Because the slightest mistake, you don't pass your design, automatically you have an extra year. You can't get around it. And that's just it. So I always tell them, please, you are here now. Just do what you ought to do at the right time. I heard say that these architecture students, lecturers are witches and wizards, are so mean. They don't give that. It's for their own, it's actually for their own good. Yes, it is. So I just encourage them, do what you have to do. Don't feel you're better than the next student, because a student who is not even as good as you might solve your design problem. So teamwork, always work as a team. And that's the culture working in the studio gives you. If you work in the studio, you get to see what others are seeing. So teamwork, working together, is about the best thing that can happen to any studio, any student of architecture, actually, learning to work with others. So I always encourage, don't go home and do your assignments alone and come back and find out that you got an E. And you say, no, it can't be. I'm sure I did better than that. So that's it.
Okay, Ma. Thank you so much for that. So, Ma, I would like us to talk about masters in architecture, both in Nigeria and abroad, because we got some questions that some students sent. So, first of all, there's this question on someone's asked, I would love to know about masters. I would love to do my masters in Unilag, but I'm torn between doing it first. So I would like to know if I can do the masters before my NYSC. Also, I have a 2-2. Would I be able to get into master's program with such a certificate? Thank you.
Yes, 2-2. Yes, you can do masters. Then you can, if you are moving from one school to the other for your masters, like the university, almost every university regulation, you cannot do masters in another school without an NYSC discharge certificate. So if you are moving from one school to the other, that means after your BSc, you need to do your NYSC. But now I know there are also some schools that if you finish your M and BSc, apply it for NYSC, you may get it. But it's easiest if you finish your BSc in your school. There you can get your masters going for masters without. But if you leave a space, a year or two, and you now come back to the same school, they'll ask you for NYSC discharge because it's a criteria for admission into the master's program. I think it's only architecture that you can move straight from BSc to MSc without the NYSC. Or maybe you got a first class in your course, and then the university gives you a straight on MSc. So they waive the NYSC because you're moving in straight to do a master's. Some people that get first class get MSc stroke PhD. So they can do that. That's why you see some people get a PhD 24 because they left BSc and went straight into that. So but for architecture, once you are changing school, there's a need for you to have an NYSC discharge because one of the things you will upload when you're applying for universities abroad, NIA architecture courses that are by ARCON. Go to such a school and in Nigeria, you do not have a problem with your licensure. But if you've gone to a school that it's not transcript, request for a lot of things. Sometimes it causes delay for the candidates after their masters. Then a lot of people have made that mistake. They go abroad, they study things like urban design, management, unless you have an MSc in architecture, you can be licensed to practice. So that's about it. So people need to be very careful what they want to do so that you don't still finish your master's, come back and have to do another one. But now that's an approval for universities to set up faculties of architecture. I'm sure things might change with that. Because if you set up a faculty of architecture and you have urban design as a course, then ARCON is responsible for all architecture. So they will have to do something else. But still, I'm sure they're still working.
Thank you, ma. Then this question, someone asked, what universities in Nigeria admit students with HND at 300 level, or is it based on grades?
HND for what the NUC ARCON. If you have an HND and a good grade, you might enter a university 2 years and get a PS. If you have an OND or not a very good ND, a good grade, direct entry, which is 2 years. That's what ARCON, and I think ARCON approves. But generally, most schools, people come in and do 3 years to get the BSc. But which the current issues on the ground, the HND candidates may no longer have to do that. From what we're reading in the papers about the BSc and HND being the same. So that might now encourage HND students to do their masters to be able to get licensed.
For universities in Nigeria that admit HND students at 300 level, or is it based on grades?
Yes, I said it's based on grades. If you have a good HND grade, you can come in at 300 level because that means your scores are good and when it's assessed. But even at that, there are schools that still admit them only at 200 level. So it's university specific. Those that admit at 300 and those that admit at 200.
Thank you, ma. So the next question is, these questions are related to studying abroad for a master's in architecture. So three people asked the same question on why can't we practice in Nigeria with a master's gotten from abroad? I would love to do my master's in the UK, but the part of me not practicing in Nigeria is bothering me. So another person asked if NIA and ARCON should be free on foreign master's degree, going to Europe to learn architecture, then through masters and coming here to practice will improve our architecture a lot. So Ma, can you say something about this?
I answered that. I said, where you do your master's, the university, has a lot to do with if ARCON allows you to take the licensure exam. First of all, they need to understand it doesn't matter where you do your master's. If the important thing is that you take the licensure exam. And the first step for whoever wants to is to ensure that the university, that they do, first of all, that they do a MSc in architecture. I had said not in urban design, not in interior architecture, but MSc architecture. And that when that is done, it is the duty of the student to ensure that the school he's going to is also accredited by the licensure body where he's going. Because if you go to a school, for instance, school in Europe, that's whatever body, something or ARB, that are not licensed, they cannot license students from that school. You don't expect ARCON to allow you to take their own exam. That is the first point. The second one, there are also schools, they can ask ARCON. Even ARCON goes on accreditation to some schools. There are some schools in Cyprus, that's Europe, right? Where ARCON actually does accreditation. So anybody who goes to such schools that are recognized by ARCON as studying MSc architecture, and that school is also recognized by their regulatory body as offering MSc in architecture and therefore can license their students. I don't see why they won't be licensed in Nigeria. But the question is asked as if, oh, once you finish masters, you come back and practice. No. When you finish your masters, wherever you finished your masters, it's the same criteria. It doesn't matter where you do your masters, as long as it's an accreditable masters. You have to have 2 years post graduation, qualify for no problem with where you did your masters, except if it's an already where you did it. But if not, once you come to ARCON, 2 years has gone, you apply. People are doing it every day. People from Nigeria, when we go to schools accredited, and like when you go to UK, you also take their own exams. If they're asking if they take the exams there, licensure exams there, what happens when they come here? Our architecture and the architecture in Europe are not the same. We all know that. We belong to the tropics. So they have to take our own exams to, like lawyers. You study law in anywhere in the world. When you come back to Nigeria, you go to law school to be called to bar. They don't just say, oh, you'll be practicing there, you have there, and they call you to bar. No. So it's the same thing. These are professional courses. And each country has its own regulations that you have to understand to be able to practice in those countries. So that's just as simple as it is.
Thank you so much. So I think, let me just add this to the question. As a lecturer, are there things you wish the educational system in Nigeria should do differently and right?
As for studying architecture, there's so much more that can be done. There's room for improvements. There's also so much that can change. Architecture is faced with so many challenges in Nigeria professionally, in the universities, a lot of schools don't really understand what it takes to study architecture, especially when they just start the school newly. It takes a long time for most institutions to adjust and understand the requirements, and that it's not just like any other course. And a lot of the students also come into architecture without fully grasping the hard work involved. I think adjustments in the system could be better. ARCON was proposing a 5 years registrable degree instead of the 2-4 system, and so that we'll stop having all the dichotomy about BSc, that. So if we can have a straight registrable degree like pharmacy, engineering, and all that, even it might be a bit better. So that then if you want to now that architecture has been unbundled, so after your registrable degree, you can go and specialize in urban design, interior architecture, landscape architecture, even design. And then we can start specializing and having people who are specialists in hospital design, hotel design, and all kinds of buildings, church buildings, and all that. I also think the students need to have a little bit more practical experience. The 6 months sideways is not usually enough. If students are made to log in their activities during long vacations and then submit it towards graduation, so that you have so many hours of or months of experiential influence in offices with architects, in practice with architects in the field, in construction, it might just enhance our studies.
If you take architecture, for instance, the concepts keep changing. Now everybody's talking about energy efficiency, net zero buildings, and all that. In architecture, we need to get a bit more practical, so that the students can relate as they are studying. They can relate it to what is in the field. We probably need to increase the time students spend in the field. I think when I was on the site, or learning how to write letters, or learning how to report site reports or something. So architecture needs to be more practical. We need to be more practical. We have lecturers who have never been in the field to come in and take some of the practical courses. But then we also have these days the number of lecturers in architecture who have practiced and then come to lecture is also increasing. But there needs to be practice and field. And then we also need to increase impactful research in architecture. I've always thought that NIA, archives, and in those places where architects are employed works, that they need to start encouraging and funding research in architecture. I think it is absolutely very important.
Thank you so much, Ma. Thank you for honoring this interview on Architects Corner. With this, we've come to the end of this session. Thank you for attending to all these questions.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much.
It's nice talking with you, and I wish you the best. Keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop. There's
Thank
still so
you.
much you can cover. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So
Thank
have
you.
a great weekend and a good day ahead.
And you too. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So to wrap up this video session, do you have any questions bothering you about the NIA, ARCON, architecture and architectural practice in general in Nigeria? I'll leave a link in the description of this video so as to enable you ask your questions. Don't forget to subscribe so that you get notified when the questions have been answered by architects and when I upload the next video. And finally, share this video to your friends so that more people can be informed and send in their questions. We can all learn from one another. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. I hope this was informative. Thank you. See you next time.